You sent us a children's audiobook about a kid, a talking fox, and a drawing of a snake eating an elephant.
Yep, the classic.
And you specifically asked us to apply it to your 2026 career burnout. And I'm going to be completely upfront with you. My first thought looking at this was, absolutely not.
Oh, come on.
No, seriously, we cover macroeconomic shifts here. We talk about data architecture, optimization strategies. Why in the world are we doing a deep dive on Antoine de Saint-Exupéry's The Little Prince for a modern professional whose brain is just, completely fried by Slack notifications and
Yes.
Q3 deliverables?
Well, because it is the exact antidote to that fried brain.
You really think so?
I am jumping in immediately here as a passionate advocate for this text, and we're specifically looking at the complete Richard Howard translation today. But, we really need to strip away the cultural baggage of this just being a cute children's story.
Right, the whole fairy tale vibe.
Exactly. Because it's not that. It is an absolute, uncompromising survival guide for the modern attention economy. I mean, it is a razor-sharp, devastating critique of the exact optimization and, metric-obsessed hustle culture that you just described.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because if you are telling me that a story about a kid pulling up imaginary weeds,
Baobabs, actually.
right, baobabs, a kid talking to a flower is somehow going to help you, the listener, manage a remote team across 4 time zones or, survive the absolute meat grinder of modern venture capital, I'm going to need some incredibly serious convincing.
Challenge accepted.
I'm playing the skeptical critic today, honestly, not just for the sake of it, but because I live in the real world. We all do. We have KPIs, we have mortgages, we have algorithms determining our visibility. We can't just wish that away.
And I wouldn't ask you to wish it away. The goal today is to rigorously debate the deeply counterintuitive advice hidden inside this text. Because Saint-Exupéry is fundamentally arguing that the 2026 logic you are championing right now, this relentless scaling, the obsession with efficiency, the quantification of human value, it's not just making us miserable.
It's making us miserable, yes, but what else?
It is actively blinding us to reality. He's diagnosing a massive cognitive failure.
A cognitive failure. All right, well, let's test that. Because the book sets up this tension, literally on page 1.
Right out of the gate.
Yeah, the narrator doesn't start with a fairy tale. He starts by relentlessly roasting adults. He calls them grown-ups in this incredibly condescending tone.
He really does.
And he sets up this foundational tension using his childhood drawings. So, drawing number 1 is a boa constrictor that has swallowed an elephant whole. But when he shows it to the grown-ups, they just see a lumpy hat.
Right. They see a hat because a hat is domestic, it's quantifiable, it has a clear utility.
It makes sense to them.
Exactly. The grown-ups, quote, always need explanations.
Yeah.
So the narrator draws the inside of the boa constrictor, drawing number 2, to explicitly show the element digesting.
Which is pretty graphic for a 6-year-old.
It is. And the grown-up's response is, well, it's the first major red flag of the book. They don't marvel at his imagination or the biological terror of the image.
No, they advise him to put away his drawings and apply himself to geography, history, arithmetic, and grammar.
Yeah, they basically force him to abandon a career as an artist at the age of 6.
Which leads him to become a pilot. And he uses drawing number 1 as this lifelong litmus test, right?
Yeah.
Whenever he meets a grown-up who seems even slightly enlightened, he shows them the picture.
To see if they get it.
Exactly. And if they say, oh, that's a hat, he immediately dumbs himself down. He completely refuses to talk about jungles or stars. He talks to them about bridge, golf, politics, and neckties.
And then the grown-up is thrilled to know such a reasonable person.
Great. So what's the takeaway there?
What's fascinating here is the definition of a grown-up. Because Saint-Exupéry isn't talking about biological age.
Okay, what is he talking about?
He is mapping out a psychology of profound superficiality. The grown-up mind only processes the surface layer, the hat. They are entirely incapable of comprehending the invisible essence, the elephant inside. This is a direct attack on how we evaluate value and truth.
I see where you're going, but let me push back hard on this. Arithmetic, geography, grammar, those are literally the tools of civilization.
Sure, but
Look, if I'm evaluating a tech startup's runway or trying to understand global supply chain bottlenecks in 2026, I need the arithmetic and the geography.
obviously you need math, but that's not ROOP.
Wait, when the narrator complains that grown-ups only care about numbers, he gives this example. He says, if you tell an adult about a new friend, they don't ask about the sound of his voice or if he collects butterflies.
Right.
They ask, how much money does his father make or how much does he weigh? And if you describe a beautiful red brick house with geraniums on the roof, they draw a blank. But if you say, I saw a house worth 100,000 francs, they immediately say, what a pretty
Yeah,
house.
exactly.
I mean, isn't the narrator just being completely naive here? We use numbers as a shared objective language to establish a baseline reality.
But the text is arguing that when you rely solely on numbers to establish reality, you actually lose the reality altogether. You substitute the metric for the object.
How so?
Well, a house ceases to be a place of warmth and geraniums. It simply becomes a financial asset on a ledger. And I think the most devastating critique of this modern metric trap is the anecdote about the Turkish astronomer.
Oh, the guy who discovers asteroid B612.
Right, the Little Prince's home. So in 1909, this astronomer makes a brilliant, mathematically flawless demonstration of his discovery at an international astronomical congress.
And nobody believes a word he says.
Nobody. And why? Because he is wearing traditional Turkish clothing. The scientific establishment dismisses him entirely based on his aesthetic presentation.
It's all about the optics.
Completely.
Mm.
But fast forward to 1920. A dictator forces the population to dress in European styles under penalty of death. The astronomer gives the exact same presentation with the exact same data, wearing an elegant European suit.
And suddenly, he's a genius.
Suddenly, the entire global scientific community accepts his discovery.
So the math didn't change at all, just the suit.
Just the suit. Now, I want you to map that onto 2026. Think about the massive cognitive load we are all under. We are drowning in so much information that our brains have developed these, catastrophic heuristics.
You don't have time to evaluate the math.
Exactly. We no longer evaluate the math of a claim because we don't have the attention span. Instead, we evaluate the suit.
The modern suit.
Right. We judge the validity of an idea by the verified blue checkmark next to the name, by the Ivy League credential in the LinkedIn bio, by the production value of the YouTube video. We have built an entire algorithmic economy that prioritizes the packaging of authority over the substance of truth.
Man, I cannot argue with that mechanism. I mean, we literally build recommendation engines that suppress brilliant insights if they aren't packaged in a perfectly optimized 15-second vertically shot video format.
It's depressing.
The truth is entirely secondary. The engagement metric is primary. If you don't have the suit, the algorithm renders you invisible.
And that psychological rot, the obsession with the superficial metric over the underlying reality, that is the launching pad for the middle chapters of the book.
Which are so often ignored.
Exactly. Most people remember the fox and the rose. They completely gloss over the asteroid hopping. But this sequence is arguably the most incisive sociological critique in the entire text.
The asteroid hopping is phenomenal. So the prince leaves his planet because of this complicated, deeply frustrating relationship with his demanding rose, and he visits a series of neighboring asteroids to, quote, learn something.
And what does he find?
Well, every single planet is occupied by one completely isolated adult trapped in a highly specific dysfunction. It doesn't read like a fairy tale at all. It reads like an audit of modern professional silos.
So let's dissect the mechanics of those silos. Because he first visits the king, who claims absolute authority over the entire universe.
Right.
But the prince quickly realizes the king's power is just a carefully managed illusion.
Yeah, the prince asks to see a sunset, and the king refuses to order the sun to set until conditions are favorable.
Convenient.
Right, which he calculates will be at exactly 7:4 p.m.
Wow.
And he tells the prince that a ruler must only give reasonable commands.
Such a great line.
He literally says, if I order a general to turn into a seagull and he doesn't do it, that's my fault, not the general's.
This is the absolute perfect distillation of middle management psychology and retrospective coherence.
Say more about that.
The king represents the desperate need to feel in control of uncontrollable systems. Demanding the sun to set at 7:42 p.m. is no different than a modern executive demanding that highly volatile market trends neatly align with their internal Q3 revenue projections.
Oh, I've been in those meetings.
We all have. And when the market inevitably does what it was going to do anyway, the executive writes a memo taking credit for steering the ship. The king is just a prisoner of his own org chart.
That is painfully accurate. I commanded the algorithm to bless our content campaign.
Thank
And
you.
you didn't. You just happened to launch it on a Tuesday when the news cycle was slow.
Right.
So next, the prince visits the vain man. This guy wears this ridiculous hat specifically for tipping when people applaud him, but he's the only person on the entire planet.
The ultimate echo chamber.
Literally, when the prince arrives, the vain man just demands that the prince clap his hands. over and over. He explicitly states that vain men hear nothing but praise.
The vain man is the exact architecture of the modern parasocial feed. Think about the psychological loop of personal branding in 2026. You are broadcasting an aggressively curated, flawless version of your life into the void, waiting for a quantifiable metric of applause.
Likes, retweets, share.
Exactly. The vain man doesn't want a conversation with the prince. He doesn't ask the prince a single question. He just wants the prince to function as an engagement mechanism.
Yeah.
It is broadcasting entirely stripped of human connection.
Wow. And the isolation gets even darker. Because the third planet belongs to the drunkard. The prince finds him staring at a huge collection of empty bottles and full bottles.
Such a bleak scene.
It is. He asks what he's doing. Drinking, the man says.
Yeah.
Why? To forget. Forget what? To forget that I'm ashamed. Ashamed of what? Ashamed of
A
drinking.
vicious cycle.
And then the drunkard just completely shuts down, refuses to speak.
It's the mechanics of the closed dopamine loop. The drunkard is using a coping mechanism that generates the exact shame he is trying to cope with. And in our era, the bottle isn't necessarily alcohol, it's doom scrolling. It's the hyper-financialization of our hobbies. We consume content to numb the low-level hum of anxiety created by our digital consumption.
We work 80-hour weeks to afford a lifestyle we are too exhausted to actually enjoy.
Right, and the exhaustion makes us work harder to justify the sacrifice. It's an inescapable self-sealing loop.
Okay, I am totally with you on the king, the vain man, and the drunkard. But this fourth planet, the businessman, this is where I am drawing a line in the sand and pushing back on this book.
I figured you might.
Because the prince arrives, and the businessman doesn't even look up. He's just sweating and counting over 500 million stars. He says he's only been interrupted 3 times in 54 years. And the prince asks, what do you do with 500 million stars? And the businessman says, nothing. I own them.
Right. He claims ownership simply because he thought of it first. He patents them. He writes the number on a slip of paper and locks it in the drawer.
And he endlessly repeats, I am a serious person.
Mhm.
I'm a man of consequence. And here's the thing. He is a man of consequence. Look at this through a 2026 lens. This businessman is the archetype of a highly successful tech founder.
Is he, though?
Yes. He identified an unutilized massive asset, the stars. He scaled a system to acquire them, he established legal ownership, and he built an unprecedented portfolio of value. I mean, in our world, hoarding that data is how you train large language model.
That's one way to look at it.
Hoarding that capital is how you fund medical research or build rockets. You literally cannot build the future without accumulating massive scale. So why is the book treating him like a fool?
Because the book demands we examine the underlying utility of the accumulation. You say he's building the future, but the text explicitly shows he is doing no such thing. He's accumulating strictly for the sake of accumulation.
But the value is in the asset itself.
No, the prince, who operates on actual logic, not adult rationalization, points out the parasitic nature of this behavior. The prince says to him, I own a flower, which I water every day. I own 3 volcanoes, which I rake out every week. It is of some use to my volcanoes, and it is of some use to my flower that I own them. But you are of no use to the stars.
Man, you are of no use to the stars. I mean, that is a gut punch.
It dismantles the entire philosophy of digital hoarding. The businessman extracts conceptual value, the numbers, without providing any reciprocal care or utility to the asset.
He just locks it in a drawer.
Exactly. And this is exactly what we see in the hollow financialization of everything in 2026. Think about holding companies buying up single-family homes just to keep them as spreadsheet assets while actual neighborhoods hollow out.
Right, nobody's living in them.
Exactly. Or think about tech monopolies hoarding petabytes of user data in massive server farms. Not to improve the user's life, but just to ensure a competitor can't have it.
Just writing the number on a slip of paper.
Yes. Or on a personal level, think about individuals buying hundreds of web domains they will never build on, or hoarding thousands of unread newsletters. You possess it on paper, but you have no relationship to it. It is the sickness of scale without purpose.
The sickness of scale without purpose. Wow, that actually brings us perfectly to the 5th planet, which I think is going to hit our listeners harder than anything else.
That was the lamplighter.
The lamplighter. This planet is tiny. Just enough room for a street lamp and the lamplighter himself. He lights the lamp and says, good evening. A minute later, he puts it out and says, good morning.
It's exhausting just reading it.
It really is.
Yeah.
The prince asks why he's doing this at such an insane pace, and the lamplighter says orders are orders. He explains that the orders used to make sense. He lit the lamp at night, put it out in the morning, and had the rest of the day to rest and sleep.
The good old days.
Right. But over time, the planet started turning faster and faster. Now it completes a full revolution every 60 seconds. But the orders haven't changed, so he's lighting and extinguishing the lamp every single minute. He literally has no time to sleep.
I cannot emphasize enough how profound this is regarding the mechanics of modern burnout. The lamplighter is the tragic hero of the 2026 workforce.
Let's break that down.
Let's break down the metaphor. The planet is turning faster. That is the exponential acceleration of technology. It's the shift from asynchronous communication like a letter or an early email to synchronous communication, Slack, Teams, instantaneous global capital markets.
You can never turn it off.
The rotation of our environment has sped up beyond human comprehension.
But the orders haven't changed.
Precisely. The orders are our biological hardware, our nervous systems, and our archaic corporate structures. We are applying a 20th century industrial productivity mindset to a 21st century hyper-connected reality.
It's completely broken.
The lamplighter is trapped on a blind algorithmic treadmill. He is executing a task that made sense in a slower paradigm, but has been rendered completely absurd by the speed of the current planet. Yet he is too dutiful, too loyal to the orders to stop.
And the crazy thing is the prince actually tries to give him a life hack.
He does.
The prince says, look, your planet is so small, if you just walk slowly, you can stay in the sun forever and rest. And the lamplighter rejects it. He says, the only thing I want in life is to sleep. Walking slowly requires effort.
He's too tired to even optimize.
He doesn't want an optimization hack to survive the treadmill. He wants the treadmill to stop. And I relate to this violently. I have been the lamplighter. You check your phone at 11 p.m. to extinguish a fire, and by 6 a.m. you're lighting another one.
And it is deeply heartbreaking, because the prince realizes the lamplighter is the only adult who isn't completely ridiculous.
Why? Because he's actually doing something.
Because he is the only one occupied with something other than himself. The king, the vain man, the businessman, they are entirely self-absorbed. The lamplighter possesses genuine dedication to a duty outside his ego.
Wow.
And that is exactly what modern systems prey upon. The system doesn't break the lazy people. It weaponizes the dedication of the best people until they burn out.
That's heavy. And before he finally heads to Earth, the prince stops at the sixth planet, the geographer.
Right, the scholar.
This is an old scholar who writes massive eternal books. He claims to know where all the oceans, mountains, and deserts are. But when the prince asks if this specific planet has oceans, the geographer says, I couldn't say.
Which makes no sense.
Because he isn't an explorer. He never leaves his desk. He just interviews explorers and demands empirical proof of their findings.
This represents the terminal stage of analysis paralysis and the triumph of big data over lived experience.
I mean, he's basically a data analyst.
He sits in his ivory tower of metrics, completely disconnected from the physical reality he claims to map. He mistakes the map for the territory. But the real heartbreak happens when the prince tries to tell the geographer about his rose.
Yes, the prince describes his beautiful, demanding flower with her 4 little thorns, and the geographer flatly refuses to record her in his massive book.
He dismisses her completely.
He says, we do not record flowers because flowers are ephemeral. The prince demands to know what that word means, and the geographer explains that geography deals with eternal things. Mountains don't move, but ephemeral means threatened by imminent disappearance.
And this triggers the prince's first profound moment of existential regret.
He realizes he left her all alone.
Exactly. He realizes he left his fragile rose entirely alone on his planet, armed with nothing but 4 pathetic thorns to defend herself against the universe. The geographer embodies a worldview that only values the rigid, the permanent, the structural, institutions, legacy code, immutable ledger.
Things that last forever.
But it casually dismisses the fragile, transient, beautiful things that actually confer meaning to existence.
Which perfectly sets up the disaster of his arrival on Earth. Because when the prince lands on Earth, he isn't just dealing with one weird, isolated guy on a tiny rock. He encounters massive, industrial-scale humanity.
It's overwhelming.
He sees how the pathologies of the businessman and the geographer manifest at the level of society. He meets the railway switchman.
And the switchman is managing thousands of travelers, packing them into brightly lit express trains that roar past like thunder, physically shaking the switchman's cabin.
The prince sees these trains rocketing furiously back and forth and asks, what are they looking for? And the switchman replies, not even the engineer in the locomotive knows.
Just rushing for the sake of rushing.
Right. One train rushes past and then another train rushes back in the exact opposite direction. The prince asks, were they not satisfied where they were? And the switchman delivers one of the most chilling lines in the book. He says, no one is ever satisfied where he is.
So true.
Only the children are pressing their noses against the glass, watching the world go by. The adults are either sleeping or yawning.
Because the adults are merely enduring the transit. They are enduring the friction of movement to arrive at a destination where they will immediately board another train because they still aren't satisfied.
It is the illusion of motion masquerading as progress.
Exactly.
And immediately following that, he meets the sales clerk. Now, this clerk sells a highly advanced pill that completely quenches thirst.
A literal magic pill.
You swallow one a wit, and you never have to drink water again. The clerk proudly explains that experts have run the math. This pill saves exactly 53 minutes a week. You can use those 53 minutes to do whatever you like.
And the prince is baffled.
The prince thinks to himself, if I had 53 minutes to spend as I liked, I would walk very slowly toward a water fountain. Now, hold on. Let me be the voice of 2026 here.
Okay, here we go.
I would take the pill.
You would absolutely take the pill.
I would take the thirst pill in a heartbeat. I mean, I pay a premium for a dark kitchen to deliver optimized macronutrient meals to my door so I don't have to cook. I use AI to draft the baseline of my emails. I use TSA PreCheck. I aggressively strip friction out of my life to save time.
And you think that's the right move?
I don't think those saved minutes are wasted. I use them to work out or to spend time with my family. So why is Saint-Exupéry romanticizing inefficiency? Why walk to the fountain when you can solve the biological need instantly?
I am so glad you defended the pill, because we need to examine the psychological cost of removing that friction. If we connect this to the bigger picture of 2026, we have built an entire economy around the express trains and the thirst pills.
Because they work.
But the prince realizes something fundamental about human neurochemistry and the human soul. The process confers the meaning.
The process confers the meaning. Okay, walk me through the mechanics of that.
When you take the pill, you solve the biological deficit, right? Hydration. But you completely eliminate the ritual of satisfaction. Later in the book, the prince and the narrator are stranded in the desert, literally dying of thirst.
Right, the plane crash.
They walk for hours under the stars and finally find a hidden well. They pull up the bucket, and the narrator drinks. He notes that the water was as sweet as a feast. He says explicitly that this water was born of the walk beneath the stars, the song of the pulley, and the physical effort of his arms. It did the heart good, like a present.
Ah, okay.
If you take the pill, you never hear the song of the pulley. You say you use your saved 53 minutes to spend time with your family. But the optimization mindset is insidious. It bleeds into everything.
What do you mean?
Eventually, you start looking for ways to optimize the workout. You look for ways to hack quality time with your kids, scheduling 15-minute high-intensity bonding blocks.
Oh, man, people totally do that.
Convenience culture promises to free us from drudgery, but it often ends up stripping the sweetness from the result. If you take a helicopter to the top of Mount Everest, you didn't climb a mountain. You just changed your altitude.
The view is exactly the same, but it doesn't mean anything.
The view is meaningless without the exhaustion of the climb. The pill robs you of the walk.
That is a deeply uncomfortable truth.
Yeah.
We are systematically optimizing the humanity out of our daily experience, leaving ourselves perfectly hydrated but completely hollow.
Hollow is the exact word.
And that hollow feeling is exactly what hits the prince next. Right before he meets the switchman, he stumbles across a garden on Earth. And in this garden, there are 5,000 standard roses, all blossoming, all looking exactly like his one rose back on his asteroid.
And this breaks him.
Because remember, his rose had manipulated him. She swore to them she was the only one of her kind in the entire universe.
She lied to preserve her ego.
She completely lied. And when the prince sees these 5,000 identical roses, his reality shatters. He says, I thought I was rich because I had just one flower, and all I own is an ordinary rose. It doesn't make me much of a prince. And he literally collapses in the grass and weeps.
He realizes his supposedly unique, epic life is just statistically average.
Yeah.
And this is the turning point of the entire narrative, because it is precisely in this moment of absolute crushing insignificance, staring down the barrel of infinite scale and standardization that the fox appears.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. This is the 75% aha moment of the book for me. The fox appears, and the prince asks him to play. The fox refuses. He says, "I cannot play with you. I am not tamed."
Crucial word.
The prince demands to know what tamed means, and the fox says it's an act that has been entirely forgotten by men. It means to create ties.
And the fox explains the brutal reality of an untamed, scaled universe. He tells the prince, "Right now, you are just a little boy to me, exactly like 100,000 other little boys. I don't need you, and you don't need me. I am just a fox like 100,000 other foxes."
They are completely replaceable.
Exactly. But the fox says, "If you tame me, we will need each other. You will be the only boy in the world for me. I'll be the only fox in the world for you."
And the prince starts to understand. He mentions his rose and says, "I think she has tamed me." The fox begs the prince to tame him, but he lays out incredibly strict rules for how it must be done.
The rules of friction.
Yes. He says you can't just talk. Language is the source of misunderstandings. He demands patience. He says the prince must sit in the grass at a distance. The next day, he can sit a little closer, and there must be rites, rituals.
The psychology of the ritual is vital here. The fox says, "If you come at 4 in the afternoon, by 3 o'clock I will begin to feel happy. As the hour approaches, my anxiety and excitement will build. I'll discover what it costs to be happy."
But if he just shows up whenever...
If you show up at any random, unoptimized time, my heart won't know when to prepare itself. One must prepare the heart, the fox says.
And after they go through this slow, inefficient process and the fox is tamed, the time comes for the prince to leave. And the fox is going to cry. The prince says, "This is your fault. You got nothing out of this." But the fox disagrees.
He gained the color of the wheat.
Right. And he tells the prince to go look at the garden of 5,000 roses one more time. The prince looks at them and he finally sees the truth. He tells the 5,000 roses, "You are beautiful, but you are empty. No one would die for you. You are exactly like my fox was before I tamed him."
They are just a statistic.
But then he realizes his rose, his vain, lying, demanding rose, is more important than all 5,000 of them combined. Why? Because she is the one he watered. She is the one he put under the glass globe. She's the one he killed the caterpillars for.
He returns to the fox, and the fox gives him the ultimate secret of the book. It is a dual revelation. First, one sees clearly only with the heart. Anything essential is invisible to the eyes.
And the second part?
The mechanism that makes it true. It is the time you spend on your rose that makes your rose so important.
Okay, stop. Stop right there.
Yeah.
Because applying 2026 logic to this is where my brain completely short-circuited.
I love this part.
Earlier, the fox complains that men buy things ready-made in stores, but because there are no stores that sell friends, men no longer have friends. They have no time to learn anything. Think about how we approach networking and relationships today.
It's all optimized.
We apply the exact logic of the businessman. We try to scale human connection.
We absolutely do.
We swipe on dating apps to filter through 5,000 faces in an hour. We use CRM software to remind us to text our college roommates every 90 days. We broadcast life updates to 1,000 LinkedIn followers at once to maintain touch points.
Touch points, yeah.
We are desperately trying to remove the friction from relationships, but the fox is stating a terrifying, completely counterintuitive law of physics. Meaning does not scale.
Meaning fundamentally rejects scale.
Meaning is strictly, exclusively the result of friction and wasted time. It is the time you wasted on your rose that makes it important.
That's the secret.
In 2026, wasting time is a cardinal sin. We feel guilty if we aren't multitasking while talking to a friend. But the fox is arguing that the inefficiency, the slow, tedious process of pulling up caterpillars and sitting in the grass, is the only thing that actually generates the value.
You've hit the absolute core of the text. Replaceability is a myth constructed by the eyes. If you evaluate your partner, your friend, or your career using the grown-up metrics of the geographer or the businessman, they are just one unit among billions.
Statistically identical to thousands of others.
Statistically, there are 5,000 exactly like them over the next hill. But the heart knows they are completely irreplaceable because of the shared history, the invisible architecture of the time you sacrificed for them.
Which means tech platforms that promise to optimize our social lives are actually strip mining our capacity for meaning.
They want us swiping past 5,000 empty roses a day, feeling increasingly hollow because none of them are ours.
The book is daring us to stop scaling. It's demanding that we deliberately choose a rose, sit down, and endure the friction of an unoptimized relationship. But the fox gives a terrifying warning with this. He says, you become responsible forever for what you've tamed.
That word, responsible. Not ownership like the businessman.
Right.
The businessman owns the splars, but he bears no responsibility for them. The prince is responsible for the rows. You become tethered to the thing you invest your soul into. The invisible weight of that tie is the only thing that gives human life any actual gravity.
And that gravity pulls us directly into the final and frankly most shocking section of the book, the snake, the desert, and facing the heavy shell. Because when the prince accepts this ultimate responsibility, it leads to a finale that is incredibly dark.
It is a severe tonal shift. Saint-Exupéry does not pull his punches.
He really doesn't. But before we get to the very end, we need to talk about the baobabs, because they establish the psychological stakes of this responsibility.
Crucial metaphor.
Back in Chapter 5, the prince explains the terror of baobab trees. On his tiny planet, there are good seeds and bad seeds. The baobabs are the worst. They start out looking exactly like harmless little rose bushes.
Just tiny little sprouts.
But if you don't recognize them and pull them up immediately, they grow monstrous. Their roots will pierce straight through his tiny planet and literally split it into pieces. He says it is entirely a question of discipline. You must tend your planet every single morning.
The prince notes that pulling up the baobabs is very tedious work, but very easy. Yet, if you neglect it, it results in absolute catastrophe.
So keep that daily, tedious discipline in mind as we reach the climax. The narrator's plane is hopelessly broken in the desert. He's out of water. They find the well, they drink the sweet water, and the prince accepts that he must return to his rose.
But he is 500 million miles away.
Right, and he encounters the yellow snake in the sand.
The snake that speaks in riddles.
Yes, the snake tells the prince, I am no thicker than a finger, but I am more powerful than a king's finger. Anyone I touch, I send back to the land from which he came.
A very clear threat.
And the prince, who is desperate to fulfill his responsibility to his tamed rose, makes a calculated deal with this deadly creature. He tells the narrator, it's too far, I can't take this body with me, it's too heavy, it'll be like an old abandoned shell. There's nothing sad about an old shell.
It's haunting.
And then he stands still. The snake strikes his ankle like a flash of yellow metal. He falls gently, like a tree falling in the snow. And the next morning, the narrator cannot find his body.
Leaving the narrator completely alone in the desert, staring up at the stars.
I have to stop you here. As a modern reader, I am genuinely disturbed by this. This reads like an explicit allegory for suicide. He voluntarily gets bitten by a venomous snake to escape his physical body. To travel back to a flower, how on earth is a listener supposed to process this ending? We went from waste time on your friends to shed your mortal coil via reptile venom. It feels completely unhinged.
This raises an important question, probably the most critical interpretive challenge of the book. How do we decode this sacrifice without becoming completely fatalistic? We have to look at the mechanics of the allegory. The prince realizes that his responsibility to the rose is absolute, but he is trapped in the physical, biological world of Earth. His body is the heavy shell. What does that heavy shell represent in the overarching philosophy of the book?
I mean, it represents the tangible, the measurable, the stuff the grown-ups care about.
Exactly. The heavy shell is the physical, metric-driven reality. The entire world of the grown-ups, the geographer's mountains, the businessman's ledgers, all of it is heavy. It anchors you to the superficial.
So shedding it is symbolic.
The prince's decision to shed the shell is the ultimate rejection of the adult worldview. He is demonstrating that the invisible tie, his duty to the thing he tamed, is vastly more real and more important than his own physical existence. He is sacrificing the ego, the visible hat, to honor the invisible elephant.
So the death of the prince is the ultimate anti-businessman move. The businessman hoards physical ownership to inflate his ego. The prince sacrifices his entire physical reality to serve an emotional tie.
Yes, and this is where the baobabs become crucial to our survival in 2026. The baobabs represent the mental hygiene required to sustain this philosophy in a hostile world.
How so?
In our hyper-connected, deeply cynical digital age, the bad seeds are everywhere. They are the algorithmic nudges toward outrage. They are the toxic workplace habits that demand you check email on a Sunday.
Oh, man.
They start out looking harmless. Just a little tweet, just a quick Slack message. But if you don't aggressively pull them up every single morning, if you don't ruthlessly maintain the borders of your inner planet, those cynical, metric-obsessed roots will grow and split your psyche into pieces.
That is incredible. The baobabs aren't just bad habits. They are the creeping logic of the grown-ups trying to colonize your mind. You have to
Right.
tend your planet to keep the soil safe for your rows.
Precisely.
But the emotional cost of this is terrifying. The fox warned him, you risk tears if you let yourself be tamed. The book doesn't end with a happily ever after. The narrator is left in agonizing grief.
He is. He looks at the stars, which sometimes sound like 500 million laughing bells and sometimes sound like crying. He is tortured by a tiny detail. He forgot to draw a letter strap for the muzzle on the sheep he drew for the prince.
Yeah.
He constantly wonders, did the sheep break loose and eat the rose?
Look up at the sky. Ask yourself, has the sheep eaten the flower or not? And you'll see how everything changes. The narrator says no grown-up will ever understand how a question like that could be so important because a grown-up, a 2026 rationalist would say, who cares? It's one unverified plant on a rock millions of miles away. Focus on your Q3 projections.
But for the one who has tamed and been tamed, the fate of that unseen flower is the axis upon which the entire universe spins. The metrics fade away, and only the invisible tie remains.
So what does this all mean? How does our listener take this poetic, deeply radical philosophy and actually use it tomorrow morning? Let's synthesize this blueprint for surviving 2026. It goes against everything we were taught in business school, but it might be the only way to stay sane.
The blueprint is severe, but clear. Step 1. You must audit your professional and personal life and identify exactly where you are acting like the businessman or the geographer. Where are you hoarding connections, wealth, or data simply for the sake of scale without providing reciprocal utility? You have to stop counting the stars just to lock the number in a drawer.
Step 2, you have to recognize when you have become the lamplighter. Look closely at your daily routines. If the planet is spinning exponentially faster, but your internal orders haven't changed, you are trapped on a toxic algorithmic treadmill.
Lighting and extinguishing fires every 60 seconds.
Exactly. No productivity hack will save you. You have to find the courage to step off the planet, or you will burn out completely in service of a broken, obsolete system.
And step 3, you must actively reject the cult of optimization. Recognize the pill clerk when he tries to sell you a shortcut out of your own humanity.
Don't take the thirst pill.
Don't take it. The 53 minutes you save by optimizing your life are dangerously hollow if you don't spend them walking slowly to the well. Embrace the friction. Stop trying to scale meaning and start deliberately wasting time on your rows. Pull up the baobabs of digital cynicism every morning and prepare your heart for the rituals of genuine connection.
I came into this deep dive with my skeptical hat glued to my head, but honestly, I am leaving entirely convicted. I am looking at my calendar right now and seeing nothing but express trains rushing back and forth to nowhere. I have some serious baobabs to pull up.
I want to leave you, the listener, with one final, deeply provocative thought. It comes from the very end of our source material, tucked away in the translator's note by Richard Howard.
Oh, the 2000 translation.
Yes. When he was translating this text, updating the original 1943 translation, he noted something profound about language and time. He wrote that all translations date. Every decade has its own circumlocutions, its own compliances. A translation that perfectly captured reality 50 years ago becomes an outdated makeshift today.
It makes sense.
He argued that it is the profound privilege of the next generation to sally forth and translate the truth again.
Translating the core essence for a new set of conditions.
Exactly. And I want to direct that concept squarely at you. Your understanding of your own life, your career, your ambition, that is a translation. The values you held fiercely 6 years ago when you were perhaps obsessed with efficiency, climbing the ladder, and counting numbers like the businessman.
Right, the things we thought mattered.
That might simply be an outdated translation of who you are. It was the translation you needed then to survive. But you are not trapped by it. You are allowed to sally forth. You have the privilege right now in the relentless speed of 2026 to retranslate what is truly essential in your life.
That is a staggering thought. You don't have to keep defending the old translation.
You really don't. So tonight, I challenge you to step outside. Look up at the sky. Think about the invisible ties you forged. Ask yourself the terrifying question, has the sheep eaten the flower? Have you aggressively protected what you've tamed? Or have you let the grown-up numbers and the express trains distract you from the garden? Have you wasted time on your rows today?
And as you wrestle with that, remember that when you try to explain this new priority to the world, when you tell them you are stepping off the treadmill to sit in the grass, they might look at you and just see a drawing of a lumpy hat.
They will definitely demand explanations.
But you'll know. You'll know it's a boa constrictor digesting an elephant. You'll know that what is essential is invisible to the eyes. You'll see how everything changes.